Gazan health officials say nearly 100 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a residential building in the north of the territory. The US has demanded an explanation from Israel, which says it is investigating. A warning, this next report contains distressing images.
It's one of the deadliest single strikes in recent weeks since Israel stepped up its attacks on northern Gaza. A 5-story residential building in Beit Lahiya turned into a tomb for almost 100 people, including dozens of children, according to the Hamas-run civil defense agency. Rescuers dig with their bare hands, though they can do little to help any survivors.
There are still civilians missing beneath the rubble of this home, with no means to provide them aid or rescue them. People are crying out from beneath the rubble of this home, but no one can offer them anything.
Israel says it's looking into the incident, which it says was in an evacuated combat zone. The survivors are left to search for their relatives amongst the few bodies so far retrieved. For any of the injured, there's little chance of receiving medical attention. The last operating hospital in northern Gaza has few resources and is evacuating its most critical cancer patients. The attack drew a rebuke from Israel's ally, the United States, which has demanded an explanation.
This was a horrifying incident with a horrifying result. I can't speak to the total death toll, but there are reports of 24 children killed in this incident. No doubt a number of them are children who have been fleeing the effects of this war for more than a year now. We have reached out to the government of Israel to ask what happened here. We don't yet know the underlying circumstances. We have not gotten a full explanation from them about what happened.
Concern too from the United Nations agency running a polio vaccination drive, which has now been suspended, leaving more than 100,000 children at risk.
So the conditions simply aren't there to roll out this second round in the north of Gaza. Our deadline is mid-November. Past that deadline, the immunity of children who have received that first dose will rapidly decline.
In the past month, Israel has concentrated its attacks on northern Gaza, saying it's preventing Hamas militants from regrouping. Gaza officials say these latest operations have come at the cost of hundreds of civilian lives.
The United Nations has warned Israel that it will be responsible for the needs of Palestinian refugees under international law if Israel does ban the UN aid agency UNRWA. UN boss Antonio Guterres says the law passed by Israel's parliament banning UNRWA would have devastating consequences for Palestinians. The aid organisation caters to almost 6 million people across the Middle East. Emily Gordine reports from the occupied West Bank.
This is Jalazun, a refugee camp north of Ramallah that was established in 1949 and one that is run by UNRWA, like so many others in the occupied Palestinian territories.
Here we are at the old market of the Jalazun refugee camp. This is the market that used to be full of tents. This first generation came here, and this is where they started their life as refugees.
With decades of help from UNRWA, Palestinians turned tents into houses. Wissam Ramaha has lived here since he was a child. Life here would be very difficult without UNRWA. It provides many of the basics.
This is the health clinic. It's the only one here. There's no other place in the refugee camp. Elderly people come here and benefit from it. This is where they get all their medication.
Many Palestinian refugees continue to depend on UNRWA for housing, food, water, social services, healthcare and education. If the new Israeli law takes effect, all those services could collapse. Israel says UNRWA workers were involved in the Hamas-led October 7 terror attacks of last year, which left 1,200 people dead in Israel and 250 taken into Gaza as hostages. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the organisation must be held accountable for its part. The accusation against UNRWA prompted many donor countries to pause their funding. That funding resumed after the UN carried out an investigation and UNRWA fired 9 staff members. The Israeli government has not yet said how else it will provide for the millions of Palestinians in the occupied territories, something lawyers say it has to do.
As an occupying power, under international laws of occupation, of belligerent occupation, it has the duty that is basically composed of three sub-duties: to provide humanitarian aid, to provide for any goods that the occupied people need for their survival. That means not only food and water, but also medical services, education, electricity. Israel is, as an occupying power, has the duty to provide it itself, to allow international and foreign humanitarian agencies to provide it and to facilitate that provision, and definitely not to hamper humanitarian assistance.
But for many here, banning UNRWA is also about their identity. The UN body was created for Palestinian refugees. Its existence is seen as embodying international recognition of that status. Mahfouz Safi was born a refugee in May 1948, after his family was expelled from what is now central Israel during the First Arab-Israeli War, which saw the establishment of the Israeli state. Palestinians call it the Nakba, catastrophe.
It's a political decision to erase the issue of refugees, specifically the Palestinian refugees. We have the right, according to the existing resolutions of the United Nations, to return to our homeland and establish the Palestinian state based on the partition plan of 1947. And Israel is making every effort to erase or disable UNRWA so that the world forgets that there is a resolution that witnessed the Nakba of the Palestinian people.
UNRWA's work here is now in doubt, and with it the shape of the future for millions of Palestinians who depend on it.